Welcome back, everyone. It's just another day in the life as a military wife. And a few weeks ago, I talked to you about just different things about, babyness, getting adjusted to having a baby in the house again and everything. And I mentioned Happiest Baby on the Block. It was something that was really helpful for me. And I wanted to share it with you guys. So that's what we're talking about today. As always, I'm your host, Sam Wolf, and you are listening to Life of a Military Wife. All right, so a little bit of background on this. I first was introduced to Happiest Baby on the Block, which is it's a book and a little movie video thing done by Dr. Harvey Karp. The research was done in the early 2000s, or at least the book was published in 2002. And I was introduced to it through my infant development class. And in my infant development class, we covered a lot of different things, but one of the huge chunks of our final was this concept, which is the 5 S's and the concept of a fourth trimester. That basically, babies come out of the womb almost too early compared to other mammals. Because if you think about it, horses and other mammals, they can get up and walk almost right away after they're born. Human babies, not so much. Not as independent, not as, capable of fending for themselves. And in a lot of ways, the first 3 months, or fourth trimester, as he puts it, is a transition for babies to try to get used to life out of the womb, but they still are kind of wanting those comforts of the womb. And that's where his principle of the 5 S's comes into place. So it's also based on some other research. It's called the period of purple crying. Basically, it's this period where the babies will cry for long periods and it'll be difficult to soothe them. And it's usually in that first trimester. And it's not because you've done anything wrong. And oftentimes you've done all the basics, which is feed them, change their diaper, and burp them and whatnot. Sometimes it's because of gas or other things, but then there's other times where there's really no obvious reason, and that's where these 5 S's come into play. They are a natural trigger to soothe the baby and kind of just calm them, and almost it really does flip a switch. I remember watching the movie of these parents practicing the techniques and thinking, okay, but it's probably not that easy. The babies probably weren't that upset. It's not that big of a deal. Well, then come being a new parent myself, like a year later, year and a half later, yeah, it's a thing. So our oldest, he had what is commonly referred to as colic. He also had acid reflux and gas. But basically, he just was really fussy, and it wasn't because of anything we were doing wrong. It's just babies' bodies are complicated, and it's just as hard for them as it is for us. And so we were kind of struggling with how to soothe and how to handle this. And the birthing center where we had our son reminded me of this research. And I was like, oh my goodness, I took I took a whole final exam on this. Like, I've studied this. Why didn't I remember it? But, that's a common thing with parents. And so, for any of you who have friends who've just had kids, military families, as I've specified in the past, on average have 2.5 children. So, this is a common concept that has been helpful with other military families that I have talked to and worked with. And so I want to kind of share this out generally. So maybe you don't have a baby, but you've got a friend or a sibling or family member who does, or whatnot. This is just really helpful information. So the 5 S's, which I've referenced already, are swaddling, side, shushing, swing, and sucking. And I'm going to go into all of those kind of in more detail, but these really do work. And sometimes you can get away with just doing one or two, but very frequently you're going to have to do all 5. And so understanding all 5 is important. And that's why I'm going to break them down for you individually. So the first one is swaddling. And there is a very, very specific technique when it comes to swaddling, or at least there was. So when we had our first kid, over 10 years ago, 10 years plus ago, um, wow, it's been a hot minute. Um, we had to learn how to wrap our baby in a blanket, which in a very special way, which is called swaddling. And it's this very tight wrapping technique, like wrapping them like a burrito is the joke, or like a present, so that their arms are held tight and their legs are confined but can still move a little bit. And you have to do it in a specific way, otherwise, it comes undone. They can get themselves out and then they'll wake themselves up, because there's 2 types of sleeping. There is the active sleeping and then like the deep sleeping almost. So the active sleeping is where the baby's eyes are almost like half open, they're moving their arms around, they're just making facial expressions, that sort of stuff. That's active sleeping, but they are still sleeping. Don't wake them up. Like they're still sleeping. And then there's like the out like a light sleeping. And so you want to make sure they're swaddled properly. Well, this was a whole technique. Like it was a whole learning process. And I will admit straight up, my husband was far better at the swaddling technique than I was. I was always afraid of making it too tight. And now now that it's been 10 years plus, um we discovered a whole new wonderful thing in that period of time between our youngest previously and our current youngest. Some genius individual developed these swaddlers, and they're basically this little, like, almost sack that you like put the baby in, and then you velcro their arms in, and their heads all nice and free and wiggly, but they like are contained and happy. And not only is that a thing, oh my goodness, is that a thing, but on top of that, some genius then went on to add a zipper to the leg part so you can keep their arms swaddled and still change their diaper. And the brand that we were given, and we were given these, like I had heard about them, I had heard how good they were, but I was sitting there going, we've done it the other way, we're fine. And I mentioned it to my husband, I'm like, maybe we should look into these, but I'm not sure. He's like, we're good, we know how to swaddle, we're fine, we know how to do this. And then somebody gave us these as a gift. Oh my word, they are fantastic. They are great. I love them. The brand they gave us was called Swaddle Me, and they're like not a blanket but a blanket, but I really recommend, if you again know someone who's having a baby or are having a baby yourself, put it on the baby registry or get it for your friend. They will love you. These things are fantastic. Anyway, I personally am a huge believer now in these little Swaddle Me blankets. The next technique is, the second one is called side or stomach. Now, what this is once you got them all nice and swaddled, you turn them on their side, and or football hold. So anyone who's seen like someone running with a football, you can hold a baby on their stomach that way with their head towards your arm and your hand wrapped around kind of their bum, supporting their bum. Um, and that's a good technique if the side technique doesn't work. And so the other one is on their side with their head facing away from you, swaddled. Definitely swaddle them first. So that is the side technique. And again, all of these individually don't sound very impressive, but trust me, when you've got a screaming baby who's been screaming for a couple of hours and you've done everything, and then you do these five simple things and it works, it is magic. It is like chef's kiss magic. Anyway, the third one is shushing. So shushing isn't like just going shh and like yelling at them, but it's a calm, first of all, shh sound. Um, and that's because it mimics the kind of white noise, fuzzy noise that they were getting in utero, and they find that soothing. Another thing that's helpful is a white noise machine, also. If you don't want to constantly be shushing. And if the baby is really howling, just shushing them from a distance ain't gonna do a thing. You really have to get right up in their ear and do it for it to calm them down very often. So, especially if they're really going at it, you're gonna have to get in their ear shushing to make it so they can hear you. All right, number 4 is swinging or swaying. I've heard some people um put shaking, but because of shaken baby syndrome, I would never ever use that terminology for this. It really is a swaying and swinging. And part of the reason why swaying, holding your baby and like rocking or gently like doing a swinging motion in like a baby swing is so helpful is because when the mom in you when they're in utero, they're swinging all the time. They're swaying all the time when the mom's walking around. They're getting that movement. And so that movement again is reminiscent of their experience in utero, and so it's comforting. And in all sincerity, a baby swing was a lifesaver from day 1 with our first kid all the way until now. That rocking motion just helps because you can only like sway a baby and walk back and forth for so long before your arms give out and your feet are hurting. So having a mechanical swing is fantastic. It's another one of those inventions that I just don't know how parents lived without before, you know, modern era and our wonderful lives we have now. So, and in all sincerity, every single one of our kids have slept or napped at least in a swing. Every single one of them. It was a total game changer. The fifth thing is sucking, and that's non-nutritive sucking. So like sucking on a pacifier. And I know it's controversial, and there are people who are totally anti pacifier because they don't want their kid to be hooked on a pacifier. And I hear you. But for that first 3 months, it's actually pretty helpful. And then I hear other people be like, I don't want my kid's teeth to be crooked, yada, yada, yada. There are sorry, pacifiers that are approved by dentists and orthodontists that will not cause problems with your kids' teeth. And again, it's the first 3 months. They probably don't have teeth. I mean, if your kids are teething in the first 3 months, you have a whole new set of problems in your world. And purple crying is not one of them. Um, but anyway, so non-nutritive sucking. So there again, new parents will often think, okay, if my kid is sucking, it's because they're hungry and they'll try to feed them more often, but very often they won't be hungry and they'll end up spitting all the food up. There really is just a non-nutritive sucking. Babies in utero are sucking on toes or trying to, hands, whatnot. We literally have an ultrasound of one of our babies with their whole fist shoved into their mouth, sucking on their fist. And that baby did it after being born too. So it's a thing, whether it's their hand, their thumb, a pacifier, babies will suck on things and it's soothing to them. It's a good thing. And so, yeah, if you don't want your baby to be on a pacifier all the time, I would probably phase them out of it around 3 months or 4 months so that they only have it like while you're putting them to bed and then you take it away or something like that. Again, find something that works for you if you're really anti pacifier, but it can be a game changer if your baby is really struggling with self-soothing. And self-soothing is a technique that children really do have to develop and learn. Heck, again, first kid is still learning how to self-soothe. I think there are some adults who still struggle with, heck, there's times I struggle with self-soothing. But anyway, self-soothing for babies is different, but you get my point. Um, so yeah, non-nutritive sucking is that urge to suck on something, but not because they are hungry but because it's just a soothing thing for them. Again, life in my house between dog and baby and kids. It's a miracle I get anything recorded. But anyway, that is something I just really wanted to share with you guys because it is something that has helped a lot with us as parents. And again, to be completely honest, I was well aware of Dr. Karp's research and all this whole thing well before I had kids, but because just having a baby is very mentally draining. You're not getting a full night's sleep. You're massively sleep deprived. There is a whole lot of a learning curve going on. You can't remember everything. And so these friendly reminders are huge. And then it had been a while since I had a baby, and it was a couple years ago. And I was talking to a friend and they were really struggling. And I kept thinking, I'm like, what did we do? We had something, we did something. And again, I had forgotten all about it, even though I had a final exam on this topic. And most parents don't get tested on these concepts before they have kids, but I did. And yet I still blanked on it. And so I was thinking about it and thinking about it, and then it hit me. Oh, happiest baby on the block. So again, I'm going to say it over and over and over again, but happiest baby on the block. Look it up. You can YouTube search it. You can get the book. Um, but it is a fantastic resource that I have and do recommend to every parent I know, and quite a few parents that I've worked with who've had newborns. This is just a really great technique. And honestly, the hardest technique out of all of these five used to be swaddling. But now, thanks to the wonderful innovation of these swaddle blankets, that is totally not even a deal breaker anymore. It's not even it's a non-issue because it takes all of the technique and practice and work out of that concept, which quite literally was the hardest concept. And so we're so lucky nowadays that we've got these things. We've got white noise machines, we've got swaddle blankets, we've got swings. So if you've got multiple kids and you can't be like carrying your baby around all the time, or you're working or whatever from home or whatnot, you've got that ability to get that extra help. Because as military families, unlike in previous generations, and it still happens in some communities, although I feel like less now than in past generations, you're not around family as much. You don't have that infrastructure. You don't have a mom or a mother-in-law or sister-in-law or sister or aunt or someone to be helping you with baby and kids, to have that like community or family infrastructure as much. And with the military community, we do try to be supportive of one another, but we're all kind of in the same boat. And if I'm trying to rock my kid, I can't rock your kid too. I mean, we can commiserate as we both rock our kids, but that's about all we've got sometimes. And so having these additional aids, these new inventions, these easier methods, and this research, this great resources really is a game changer. It's been a game changer for us because we've not had the benefit of being around family, geographically close to a lot of family when we've had new babies. And I mean, people can only take so long off work to come help out and hang out. And so just, yeah, this is a wonderful resource. I really do recommend share it with anyone you know who's got a new kid or has a baby or is struggling. Um, But yeah, this is something I'm very passionate about. Again, it was significant enough that we covered it in my college course, and it's been a game changer with all 4 of our kids. So again, last plug, but it's Happiest Baby on the Block by Harvey Karp, and it's Karp. And you can look it up on YouTube. You can buy the book probably on Amazon or anywhere else. Yeah, so that's my plug for today. As always, I am your host, Sam Wolf. You have been listening to Life of a Military Wife.